Let's now turn our attention to some of Server Load Balancer's features and take a look at Server Load Balancer's architecture. Alibaba Cloud provides two types of load balancer. There's the Layer 4 load balancer for routing TCP and UDP traffic, and then there is the Layer 7 load balancer for routing HTTP and HTTPS traffic. Now, the Layer 4 load balancer is based on LVS, Linux Virtual Server, plus Keep Alive-D. So you can see in the diagram on the lower right here that TCP and UDP traffic is passed to a LVS cluster and then passed to the backend ECS instances. It's the fact that we're using a cluster that allows us to provide high availability in the server load balancer. In Layer 7, for Layer 7 traffic, so that's HTTP and HTTPS, we use Tenjin, which is a web server based on Nginx. So our routing is done via Tenjin rather than LVS. But the concept is similar. We have a cluster of Tenjin servers that pass traffic back to the backend ECS instances. So for Layer 4 server load balancer, both TCP and UDP protocols are supported. The incoming client connection is bound to the server connection. What that means is the load balancer is transparent to the user. So the user's traffic passes through the load balancer unmodified and is routed back to one of the backend ECS instances with no header modification. So the traffic is not modified in any way. Now, the Layer 7 load balancer works a little bit differently. So it supports HTTP and HTTPS, and the connection that the user makes to your site actually terminates at the load balancer itself, which means that the load balancer can examine the HTTP stream and can modify headers. This is good because it means you can make intelligent routing decisions based upon the content of the connection, but it also means that when you send the traffic to one of the backend ECS instances, you do that by opening a new HTTP connection from the load balancer to the backend ECS, which means that if the backend ECS needs to see the user's original IP address, they have to get that from the X forwarded for header in the HTTP connection. They can't just check the source IP address of the incoming connection because that will be the load balancer rather than the user's IP. So keep that in mind when you're using the Layer 7 load balancer. Next, we'll turn our attention to some of Server Load Balancer's key components and functions. In particular, we'll take a look at how listeners are configured.